Welcome to New York, Florida Crosstalk. Florida transplants with a New York attitude. We give you fact-based viewpoints on today's current events. Join John and Mike where no topic is off limits.
Hello and welcome to New York, Florida Crosstalk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John. And today I want to talk about somebody who's been out of the news, the Republicans.
They definitely haven't been in the news for a while, and not the way they were before. I kept getting, I used to get so bombarded on my phone with news updates about Trump, but they've been keeping pretty quiet lately.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with they're going to kind of let the Democrats see what happens there. Trump's kind of playing the baby right now. Poor me, they're all ganging up on me type thing.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, they are. I mean, look at what they've been doing. They all when there were several people left in the campaign for the Republicans, they all agreed, whoever gets the most delegates, we're going to back up, and the establishment just went totally against him. So he is being a little bit of a baby, but does he have the right?
Yeah. But I mean, out of the two candidates, who is the most scary? To see as the next president.
Can my answer be both? I mean, they're both pretty scary. But seriously, I've been talking with several people, and several people have been around for a long time, even 20 years older than 20, 30 years older than we are, and. They're saying this is one of the scariest time in their life when it comes to candidates and how this country is going to be running, because if Cruz or Trump get in, they're kind of nervous about it. They've seen things happen.
I mean, you look at Trump and he's so much of a wild card. You never know what's going to come out of his mouth next. And you look at Cruz and he's such a right winger that you know what to expect from him. But what's worse?
That's exactly the point. Donald Trump is a wild card. You don't know what's going to come out of his mouth, and usually he just says what's on his mind. So, I mean, have you ever tried that? Just saying what's on? Yeah, you have tried that and said what's on your mind, and sometimes it just doesn't come off very nice. But he does the same thing. But he's in the limelight now. I mean, he's always been in the limelight when he's been. Even as a what do you call those, a reality show star or as a businessman. But now he's supposed to be a leader of the country. And I mean, really, other countries are looking at us going, what the heck is going on? Is this America or is this a carnival show?
And it really has been. It's been a media circus with it. I guess more with Trump than with Cruz. Cruz actually has gotten a little bit of press because of his extremist, and they really didn't think he was going to make it to where he's at now. I mean, they were actually predicting Rubio was going to come out on top originally when the election first started.
Well, you're talking about the establishment, and absolutely. I mean, I think they were trying to groom somebody like Marco Rubio, who has the look, the young guy. He just didn't have it in him. He didn't have the oomph to put him past a certain point. But again, who do you blame for this? He might have been, him or even Jeb Bush might have been the nominee if things weren't as crazy as they have been in the last, I'm going to say, almost 16 years when George W. Bush got in, and the craziness that happened with then, and then now happening with the Obama administration, how the media, the right-wing media, just put it over the edge.
Well, I think that Jeb would have still even had a chance, but he hung back too long.
He hung back, but if you look at why Donald Trump is so popular right now, and even Ted Cruz, number one, people are tired of politics, so they're going with somebody like Donald Trump, and number two, all these people who follow right-wing media and just stay on that, on that level, they see somebody like Cruz, who is an extremist, like you mentioned before, an extreme right-winger, and some of them follow him. That's why right now they're the two most popular people. They're the two people running for office. We're forgetting Kasich, but I mean, in reality, unless something major happens at the convention, he has very little chance of anything happening with him.
Well, I mean, not really if you think about it. I mean, say for instance, Cruz does pull this off, and it does go to a second vote. I mean, what are Kasich's chances then?
He might have a bigger chance, because then you might have the delegates that look for that quote-unquote moderate, and right now, I guess Kasich is the most moderate.
I know there was something I was reading in Washington Post, and they had actually said that if it comes down to the second vote, they were actually leaning towards Kasich.
And again, I do see where a lot of the establishment Republicans and also the moderate Republicans would go with Kasich, but the major party, what's going to happen if that happens, realistically? What are the Trump supporters going to do? I mean, Trump even said it himself. Trump said, if I get most of the votes and most of the delegates, even if I don't get the amount to become nominated, and they go in and take it away from me, what are my supporters going to do? Not that I'm going to start a riot, but what my supporters do, they might go out and riot. I mean, we've seen a lot of not friendly things happening at Trump rallies. What would happen?
Yeah, he said that he was actually asked directly if he'd run as a third party if he didn't get the nomination like he's expecting to get. And he never committed one way or another if he would or not. Now, if he runs as a third party, his supporters will follow him.
Most likely.
But if he drops out, what do you think's going to happen?
Again, I think it depends on how he approaches things. I don't see him dropping out unless something major happens. As far as him running as an independent, there's something called the sore loser rule, which he would have to, by a certain date or something, have to be put on the ballots, which might not give him the best chance, probably take any chance the Republicans have of really taking this election and squashing it. But going on that same thought pattern, one thing that Trump said is, if they disrespect me as a party, I might not meet with my agreement to back the other person. And have they really respected him? No, they want him out.
Well, I mean, he's been a joke throughout the election. He's a joke in other countries. How can you back somebody that you see as a joke?
That's who the constituents, that's who the Republican Party or the voters are voting for. So you're taking away the voters' thought process. You're taking away their voice by saying, okay, we're Republicans, we voted for him, the majority of us voted for him, and now you guys are taking it away from me and you're disrespecting him. Now, I'm not saying that's the right thing, because realistically, like I mentioned to you before, I think they created a monster. They created Donald Trump, and they created this anger for Donald Trump because of all the publicity and all the nonsense that they were putting out in the last 7 years. So they kind of made their bed. Now they got to sleep in it.
I think the Donald Trump was just he feeds it. He sees that his outrageous attitude or his outrageous comment just got publicity. And all at once he's got people that are cheering him on for that comment. And so it's like, oh, okay, I can do this, and I can still get these people to support me.
Right. Oh, and he said that. I mean, he made some ridiculous comments. I mean, he made some comments about him going out on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan and shooting up the place, and he would still rise in the polls. He's made some really ridiculous comments that you would thought his poll numbers would fall. I don't think, maybe there was a point that I don't think he even cared. This was all free publicity to him. Maybe his ego took over. There's so many wild card moments with Donald Trump that you say, okay, would he be better than Ted Cruz? Is some of the stuff he's saying just to go out there and incite publicity and to get people on his side, and then go out and just be more world worldwide known. I mean, he's already known in the world now. And what? No publicity is bad publicity, they say?
Well, I can understand that he's working off the free publicity. That's a given. I mean, you could see that. You could see it in his grin when he gets on the TV. He knows people like him. He knows that people are tired of the politicians, and he's playing on that. But at the same time, the no publicity is bad publicity thing is what happens when he's got to deal with another country, and now that person sees him as a joke.
That's true. That goes back to the Sarah Palin days. You got somebody who's talking, and you say that a politician that might be partially responsible for leading this country actually say those words, and now you have Donald Trump, who's like a male version of Sarah Palin. So you're right. Now, however, who's scarier? Is it Donald Trump or is it Ted Cruz? You know what I mean? Donald Trump might have that middle of the road negotiation skill with him. Ted Cruz just doesn't budge.
Well, I guess the bottom line comes down to is if he were to be elected afterwards, how is he gonna hold the office? Is he actually gonna do it professionally like he'd handle a business, or is he gonna still stick with this outrageous attitude?
Yeah, and I think it'll be a mixture of both. He likes sounding tough. I mean, the guy's a New Yorker, so you can understand the New York attitude, right? He's from from New York, from Queens, New York, but he still grew up in a lot different way than most New Yorkers, I think, did. Obviously, with the money he had and his family, but still, he's a New Yorker. Same thing with Bernie Sanders. If you listen to Bernie Sanders talk, they have that little New York about them. But saying that, I can understand him more, but he says some crazy, outrageous things, and it doesn't really matter.
Well, we got a lot of things coming up. The New York primaries are coming up, and I mean, Trump's going to be a major contender there.
Well, I mean, obviously, unless something crazy goes on, number one, if you're an odd maker, Cruz doesn't have a chance in New York. I mean, he already put down New York so many times. He's from Texas, which is, even their own governor.
A Canadian Texan.
He's a Canadian Texan, Cuban, American. But, forget the birthers out there. We won't go into that. But I mean, even the establishment talking about Ted Cruz now, you're supposed to have your people backing you up. Look at Lindsey Graham, who's a prominent Republican, and I mean, he couldn't get any colder endorsement of Ted Cruz than him. I mean, he basically, some of the comments he said were, if you kill Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate and the trial was in the Senate, nobody could convict you. I mean, he made some fun. I mean, he's a better comedian than he is a politician, I think. But he's very coldly endorsing Ted Cruz. Marco Rubio now is endorsing Ted Cruz, and I don't think that's making that big of a difference. One of the other Republicans in Oklahoma said, when asked if they'll still give Ted Cruz their endorsement, they're giving him the coldest endorsements possible.
Well, I think it's pretty clear cut that out of the two of them, who's going to take New York. But when you look back at Hillary and Sanders, Hillary has a really good chance because I mean she did 2 terms and as a senator there. But does Bernie have a chance there?
Bernie has a chance. Bernie's a New Yorker too. Bernie's from Brooklyn. I think the problem is that being an independent, a lot of his supporters were independent, and a lot of them didn't get to change their party affiliation. So now they can't even vote. So any chance that he might have had, that would actually be a lot lower. And you're right. Clinton is popular in New York when it comes to senators. She a lot of people liked her. And after this last debate, it just seems like her poll numbers actually went up a couple of points. And, there's a debate on who won the debate there. I just think it was a wash.
I kind of got a problem with Bernie to begin with because I don't think he prepares enough. He's got a lot of good ideas. He sounds like he'd be a major plus, but he doesn't think things through.
Yeah, and that's again where like we were talking the other day about Elizabeth Warren. Yes, somebody with very liberal ideas, almost similar to Bernie, but she's a lot more articulate. She is a Democrat, very liberal leaning. She was a university professor, so she can get the ideas across more. So if she would have been running against Hillary at this point, you'd have a choice. And you say, okay, are we taking a politician out of it? That's not what's going on right now. You got Bernie, and Bernie's really popular out there. He gets some of the bigger crowds in New York. As a matter of fact, I think he beat Obama's record. So he's getting the crowds. He may not be getting the votes.
It'll be really interesting if Hillary does actually pull this off, and she does come out the Democratic nominee. If who she's going to pick as a running mate. I mean, you just mentioned Elizabeth. What do you think her chances are of bringing her in?
She's mentioned a couple of people, and Elizabeth Warren is probably somewhere in there. I don't think it'll go that way. I think majority of the people within the political realm are looking at Julian Castro from Texas. I think he's a young, up-and-coming politician. It would also help with the Hispanic vote. Now, talk about making history. You would have a female president, a Hispanic vice president, and it would be a smart decision. And he's a very well-spoken, smart individual.
Ed, I'd really be curious to find out because Elizabeth right now hasn't given support to either one of them.
I think she's going to support whoever, because she's not going to endorse anybody until the nomination is solidified, and then she'll back up that person because she said good things about both of them. Mm-hmm. So Elizabeth Warren is a very strong player. She could have been a stronger player in this process, I think. Possibly if Bernie did get the nomination, I think it'd be very strong that he picked Elizabeth Warren. More than Hillary.
Yeah, I could actually see that, and I guess she's a great party supporter.
She's a great party supporter, but she speaks her mind. She goes against policy. She's gone against some of Obama's policies, but she's a big Obama supporter. And and that's what politics should be about. It's like you and I when we get into discussions. We don't agree about everything, and obviously I'm mostly right. But what are you laughing at? But no, when we don't agree about something, we can still respect each other's opinion.
Right, and that's one of the things too. That's how a politician should actually be doing things. There's some general ideas that they need to stick to, but at the same time, they need to bring their own ideas in also, instead of just following the path that's preset for them.
Absolutely. That's the way it should be. That's the way politics should be. I just think politics has gotten so much uglier. With the way the party division has happened, I looking at it in my way, and people can disagree. I think the right-wing media just took it and ran with it, and they were just trying to create all disgust with Obama administration and take power away from him. Look what they're doing with the Supreme Court nominee, and now look what's happening. You got people just picking people like Trump and Cruz. Speaking of Trump and Cruz, who do you think they might pick for their VP or whoever gets elected there? You think Kasich would be a possibility?
I think Kasich might. Actually, no, I don't think so.
Why is that?
I don't see Trump taking Kasich because Kasich is very opinionated, and I think Trump would lean more towards somebody that just agrees.
Obviously, Trump's used to yes men all around him. I mean, the guy's a businessman that looks for loyalty and people around him that say yes, yes, yes. We understand that. But I think it would be smart because, number one, you'd then get more establishment around you that would support you. And number two, you're picking somebody that's popular in his own state, that's a swing state, Ohio. Mm-hmm. It would be a smart move on his part, on either one of their parts. And he's not looked at as an extremist like the other ones. So it'd probably be a smart move on their part.
But I could see it being a smart move on Trump's part, but I think Cruz would be more likely to pick him.
Really, I see it the opposite, and I just think that Trump would look for, I think, as a matter of fact, I think Trump said he would look for an insider politician to be his VP. In one of the local, one of the recent articles that I read, I could be wrong on that, but I think it'd be a smarter move on Trump's part. On Cruz's part, see, I see Cruz I see Cruz as wanting more yes men around him, because look at what he's done. He's, as much as Trump is a wild card, Cruz is a proven extremist. Cruz goes against his own party, sticks with his beliefs. A lot of people look at that as a plus, but he's wasted so much taxpayer money because it was just that spoiled kid saying, this is the way I want it, and I can care less. He's the same guy that talks about being scared of Sharia law in this country, being scared of extremists from other religions in this country. But meanwhile, according to his own beliefs and his own statements, he wants to make this a Christian country, and not a Christian country, but his view of Christianity.
Right.
So he wants to bring his view. So a lot of people are looking at it going, he's a good Christian man, he's a good Christian candidate. But then when he doesn't believe what you believe, and he is extremist on it, he doesn't even believe in climate change. You're looking at an extremist in another sense of the word, or in all senses of the word, I should say. He seems to be more scarier. He seems to want people with his beliefs around him, too. I don't think he'll pick somebody from the establishment.
I can definitely see what you're saying, and I can see Trump wanting somebody who's established in the political arena with him, because, I mean, he's a businessman. How do you get successful? You actually employ people that are familiar with the different areas. That
could be a strength on what Trump does. Does Trump, is having a businessman in office a good idea? There's pros and cons to that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the pro is you do negotiation, you deal with people on a daily basis, but you got a guy like Trump, who, like you said, is really a joke in the world right now. And on the other hand, you want yes men around you. So the negotiation, is he doing this for ego? The guy obviously don't need the money. He doesn't need the popularity. He was getting free press now. Is that what he was doing it for in the beginning? I don't know.
And originally, he actually said he was just tired of hearing all the crap, and he thinks he could do things better.
And again, is that what he actually went out for? There's so many theories out there saying that he did it just like he did in the past for publicity and free publicity. But I think, like you saw with this climate and in this campaign, no matter what he said, there might have been things he thought to himself. When I say this, I'm going to be out of there. I got my publicity. I'm leaving, and no matter what he said, his polls actually got higher. So, maybe his ego's taken over now. Maybe he does believe he has the solutions to what he considered the world's problems. I don't know.
I guess a lot of that's going to come up when it's actually a Democrat against a Republican, and we'll actually be able to see the stance when he actually has to come out with these plans.
Right.
I mean, once again, he may have some ideas. Oh, I'm going to do this. I want to eliminate all Muslims from coming into the country. I want to block off Mexico and all this. But when he actually comes down to making a plan to do it, let's see how he's going to do it.
And again, that's it. A couple of things he said that I agree with. Number one was like what you're talking about. He's going to put these proposals out, but one thing he kept saying in the debates that I kind of understood was you got to be able to negotiate. So unlike a lot of these other politicians, he wants to start at a ridiculous statement where the other party's going to say, are you kidding me? Absolutely not. And maybe meet somewhere in the middle, figuring he'll get a better response. He'll get a better deal if he starts at an extreme position. That's like if you want $250,000, $300,000 in negotiation, and you say, give me $1.5 million.
Right. I mean, that's the whole businessman attitude.
That's a businessman attitude. But on the other side, the country really shouldn't be run like a business. We're not looking to make profit off the citizens. And that's what a businessman's mentality is, making profit. How do we make more profit next year? We need to look at this as a family. We're America, and we need to use the taxpayers' money for the taxpayers and provide programs at an affordable cost to our taxpayers. They are our country. The people make up the country. And a businessman looks at profit, and it shouldn't be a profit.
Okay, well, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here.
Who, you? Go ahead.
Okay, think of it with what he's doing now about saying about the wall and that. Okay, he's going the extreme, but maybe his final idea isn't anywhere close to that. But by going that extreme, everybody will be more accepting of something smaller.
Possibly. The only thing is, I think he's made that such an issue in his campaign. You know, it's so funny because you look at the previous elections and you look at politicians. One politician, they'll make the majority of their campaign about health care. Another person will make it about education. He's making it about building a wall by Mexico.
Right.
So, and he's just, I mean, in pretty much every debate, pretty much every interview, maybe not every interview, but every interview that brings it up, I mean, we will build a wall. So if he doesn't do it.
And make them pay for it.
Right. And he has a plan to make them do it. You know, if he doesn't do it, that's going to go back and bite him in the, you know what, if he...
Well, I mean, he says he's got a plan to do this and everything, and he'll make it happen in that, but we haven't seen this plan yet.
We haven't seen the plan. He's come out with some sort of a plan, but, you know, the challenge is, I think in the beginning he was getting away with having no policy. It was just talking points. I'm going to say things that the people want to hear. Now he was getting pressed, and I'm sure he was getting coached. He was starting to get coached on different talking points, different way of presenting things. I mean, regardless of what you feel about him, he's not a stupid man. You know what I mean? He knows. He knows things. You know, he knows words in his own words. So you know, it's going to be interesting when he actually does come out, if he becomes closer to the presidency and he's got to present much more policy-driven ideas. I don't think that's going to cut it once the two last people standing, whether it's Hillary or Bernie, you know, like right now it looks like Hillary, not counting Bernie out with his momentum in the last 8 or 9 primaries. But if it's Hillary and Trump, I don't think he's going to be able to get away of going into those debates and not talking policy.
Okay, let's. You mentioned going into the general election. Let's hear your predictions for Hillary and Sanders.
New York, I think Sanders, Hillary's going to take it, and that might be the start of the momentum change back to Hillary. Just analyzing the next primaries and the type of primaries they are, the locations they are, the polling numbers, it does seem in Hillary's favor right now. So I'm going to have to say Hillary takes the Democratic primaries.
Okay, I tend to agree with that because a perfect example of that was a week or so ago, a little over a week ago, when Bernie was interviewed. There were 9 different points where he couldn't give an answer, and in fact that was brought up last night during the debate between Hillary and him. That if he had a piece of paper in front of him, he'd have the answer. Hillary actually kind of put a dig into him about that.
Right, and you know that's pretty big. I think that was done by a New York newspaper, one of the New York newspapers. And that's an important thing with Sanders. Sanders has a lot of good ideas. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people that I talk to that are Democrats, that are very liberal, they feel in a more perfect, not a perfect world, but a more perfect world, the things that he is saying would happen. You know, he's not saying ridiculous things. Let's look at this realistically. He's talking about free college. What that really means is using the taxpayers' money, same thing with health care, using the taxpayers' money for the benefit of the taxpayer. Right now, a lot of our taxpayer money goes for loopholes and subsidies for big corporations, and that's what he's saying we need to bring back down. We need to invest in the American people again. So using that for health care, for education, it's not free. You know, you're using taxpayer money to educate the country and keeping the country healthy. Is that bad?
Okay, now let me go a little bit with the healthcare thing. Canada's a perfect example of socialized healthcare.
Okay.
I actually spoke to somebody recently who comes down here to visit for the summer and that, and or for the winter, and they said that they are now getting their first appointment to go see about getting a knee replacement. They've been waiting over 6 months for it, and they're looking at scheduling it almost a year out.
I've heard some of those, what I'm going to call horror stories, and those happen. But I've talked to a lot of different people from different countries. As a matter of fact, last week somebody saw me in one of the local restaurants, and they started bringing up the healthcare and what's going on in America, and he was talking to me about healthcare in Canada. Mm-hmm. And he kept looking at his wife and saying, you know, we take for granted what we have over there. We take for granted what we have over there. They go into a doctor's office, and they don't, for most of the cases, they don't pay a dime. Mm-hmm. It's all covered within their taxes. Now, are there wait times? Yes. There are going to be pros and cons to everything. Why are there wait times? Fact of the matter is, if every citizen is covered, you know, you're going to have a wait. Right now, is it fair that in our country you have people that can't get treated, or that when they do get treated, God forbid they do get treated for something, they go bankrupt, they can't afford it, and then they get kicked out on the street? So what's better? What's better, having to wait for a knee replacement, or possibly going to get that knee replacement, then can't get treated afterwards, or not being able to afford that knee replacement, or even, God forbid, possibly dying because you don't have health insurance?
But think of it this way too. With the amount of abuse that we have in the U.S., do you think that system would be abused? I mean, think about it. If you could go to the doctors and it didn't cost you anything, do you think that system would actually be abused so much that it would actually increase the wait times and stuff?
And again, I think when something's brand new, it tends to give a different impact, but there's much more abuse in the medical system, in my opinion, in this country than not. Because look, people that don't have insurance, that are even in the lower income spectrum, they use the emergency rooms as their primary care doctor. They start feeling sick, they'll go there for whatever. Mm-hmm. And now that builds up bills, right? Mm-hmm. Now they can't dig out of that. So if they're lower income and they're trying to dig out of that, they can't dig out of that. Their credit's gets ruined. The hospital may or may not get paid for what happened, depending upon the agreement they have with the state and the federal government. Sometimes they use it as a tax write-off. So now you're looking at a $1,500 procedure at a hospital that might have cost $25, $150 at a primary care doctor if that person did have coverage. It's also tying up the emergency rooms, where that's where people should be going for emergencies, right? Mm-hmm. You're tying up the emergency rooms, so bigger waits in the emergency rooms. When now with this other system, and you're seeing it happen now with more people becoming insured, a lot of these urgent care centers are opening.
Right.
You know, so there's always going to be, and that's the horrible thing about things, whether it's health care or something, there's always going to be talking points and pros and cons. You have to weigh the pros and cons, which is actually going to be better for the country as a whole, which is going to be better for its citizens. And my personal thought is, I'd rather see somebody be able to get treated if they have a sickness or they have an accident, God forbid, than having, okay, somebody needs a procedure done that can wait and they have to wait.
Right. Or something like having breast cancer or something like that, who can't get treatment because they don't have any insurance at all.
And how many cases have you heard of that? I mean,
quite a few.
Exactly. And I know you're big into that realm of the medical industry, and you understand a lot about that. So, I mean, that's a horrible thing. I mean, I've talked to people within the healthcare field, Medicaid representatives, Medicare representatives, and they tell me it's horrible when they got to deny somebody that they feel should be able to get coverage because they have a terminal illness, and the state didn't expand it. They didn't expand it. There's a lot of horror stories out there. So, listen, somebody that tells me they're pro-life, like a Ted Cruz, and they, he was talking about, unborn children. Hey, I understand all about that. You want to be pro-life. Be pro-life all around. What happens after this child's born? What about the child's mother? What about the child's family? You know what I mean?
Right.
What do you forget about them once they're born? That's not I'm sorry, that's not pro-life. That's pro-birth.
Right.
You know, and stuff like that I have a major problem with.
Well, we got a lot of issues coming up in the following weeks, and we'll have to check them out.
Absolutely. I know this will be coming up again. We have a lot of different issues to talk about. The campaign's only started, so
We'll see you next time.
we'll see you next time.